So the attentive viewer out there has probably picked up on what exactly I have been doing this week, and some of you guessed correctly, we are ending off on Generations Windblade, completing a trilogy that is a little bit more relevant right now. So I thought this was just a fun little way of looking back at 3 molds that just got reused and seeing what they were like in their original incarnations. So we're ending off on Windblade, the fan-chosen Transformer, and properly fan-chosen, not just what color do you want? Do you want cars or jets? No, this was like from the ground up. What color scheme do you want? What personality? What weapon type? What vehicle mode? Autobot, Decepticon, male, female. Female always wins those votes. They built this thing from the ground up based on what the fans voted, and they turned it around so fast. I could have sworn like they had some kind of blueprint or some kind of like starting point on these, but I don't know, they didn't show that much of the process. So I don't know how they came up with it so fast, but they came up with something really, really nice based on what the results were. As you can see, she's a rather made-up style of jet, at least none I'm completely familiar with, accentuated mostly by those big VTOL fans in the center of the wing. She's a little bit female thrust, just a little bit, but the unique shape of the jet with these triangular wings, not angled particularly forward or backward like they usually are, as well as the large cockpit and red sections in the back, definitely make her very unique, giving her a very unique silhouette, unlike any of the Seekers, which is always a good thing when you want to turn into a jet. Mostly cast in black plastic, the red, of course, being there at the top, and a little bit of red on the undercarriage that, you're not really meant to see yet. Now, I will say, the detailing on here is fairly nice. We do have a lot of little moldings in, a lot of little panels, and even some rivets down the side. The one thing about the Generations toys, yes, they are smaller, but every now and then they still work in those itty-bitty details, and I really appreciate it when they do. And they are present very much on this mold. And the cockpit is nice, too. Translucent yellow, and no real seats inside or anything that I can see, but it's nicely painted, all the little lines across in order to blend it into the actual front section of the jet. Works out very nicely. It's like the white nose cone, which is a little bit soft for safety reasons. So, the jet mode, very unique. I will say, not the best engineering on the jet mode. It might just be mine. I do know this mold had at least 2 different versions, which you can tell apart by the feet, the paint on the feet here. And some work better than others. Some have better jointage and better connection. On mine, I was trying to find comparisons to figure out which version I had. I couldn't find any comparison shot. But as you can see on mine, there's a few things that are a little bit stubborn, little tabs that are meant to close up and are not quite finding their home on my version of the toy. And I found that true for the most part. A lot of these sections, I had a hard time getting the wings straight. It still looks a little bit crooked if you look down the nose cone. You can still see here in the back, the tail fin doesn't quite want to close up. It all around feels like it needed a few more tabs to hold together solidly. Like even the legs, the most obvious robot mode legs to ever hide on a Transformer, really don't hold down any real way. It's a little bit of friction in the hinge, and that's about it. So it's a little bit frustrating. The toy feels a little bit looser than I'd like, and it really isn't helped by the big gap in the top. A little bit where there's no paneling or given the robot mode they needed to go for, not a whole lot they could have done about that either, which is unfortunate. The vehicle does have a few features, however, aside from landing gear that can, landing gear that can flip up in the front, molded in the back. But you can also tilt the VTOLs and get a little bit of a different look, as well as a different angle of flight, I assume. And the VTOLs do rotate to whatever effect there is, because there's really not enough to get a good spin on it or anything. But, hey, they can rotate, so they actually work out pretty good. You can also tell she has weapon storage in this mode, which really doesn't hide much. If you want to pretend that's like a tail fin going backward or something, whatever. It just kind of pegs in underneath and really doesn't hide very well. I suppose it bulks out the vehicle mode a little bit, but for the most part, I leave it off because it just feels out of place and poorly hidden. So that is the jet mode. I'm a fan of it. No, I'm not making a fan pun. No, I like it, but it does have its flaws. I wish it tabbed together better, but then again, it might just be mine. I'm really not entirely sure. Okay, so I'm going to get her into her robot mode, which I'm going to unclip a few things in order to break the connections that are solid. For instance, tab down here to keep the wing in place. We can fold that and get that out of the way. The hands, likewise, they peg in on little handles that are on the undersides of these. They come away when you pull them off, which you could have just pulled the hands off first. Rotate that around, separate legs here. This is kind of fun. We rotate the heel down and, hang on. Rotate the heel down and send it that way. And then fold the leg down to create our high-heeled boot look. It's a little bit of an interesting transformation to the leg. It's a typical hinge down thing. You see this in Combiner Wars on some of the aerial bots, but that little extra kick to get rid of the tail fins and bring the heel out gives it a little bit of a unique feel, a little bit of personality to it. We're going to open up all of this, bring this all the way back around. Flip head forward. Now while the head is forward, we're going to move these shoulders up on these. Whoa! There goes the ball joint. Luckily they all pop back together, so you can tell at least the hinge is tight. It's a double hinged strut to get it all the way lifted up to the shoulder. Close that back down. Now, for the most part, that's done, but we're going to angle the wings back a little bit just to get her profile a little bit closer to the comics. Raise up the shoulder guards. And just like that, we have our Windblade in her robot mode, where she definitely looks unique and distinct, very much unlike any Transformer I've seen before, which I guess is very appropriate for the fan-made bot. The important thing to realize here is the fans had they could determine a lot of different qualities about the toy. Thematic design was not one of them. That is something the artist worked in after the fact, most likely based on the aerial vehicle mode, the use of a sword, and working those elements together. And you'll see why when I give you a better look at the sword, but they came up with this very Japanese look. Very intricately painted, and you can get a lot of, not only you can see a hairstyle in her helmet, but very intricately painted. You know, and I don't know my Japanese culture well enough to say geisha design or whatnot. It's probably incorrect. I don't know, and I'm not going to gamble a guess. But I do like the theme. I do like the inspiration that went behind it. You can also see a fan in her hair. Now, if I pull back lightly on this, it can be removed, and she can hold it in her hand as some kind of a fan weapon, as you tend to see. But it's also clear plastic and on a strut that I really don't want to risk flexing because it can break easily, so I'm just as good leaving it there. But I am telling you it is possible, just in case you want to do it, and just in case you feel like risking it. So as you can see, she has a ton more red in this mode. It's very much taken up the place of her primary color, which is a nice little trick. I'm happy anytime, you can still tell where her vehicle mode came from. There's still elements of it, but for the most part, she does a very nice job of transitioning her color palette, which creates a nice little transformation effect. You'll notice I'm having a little bit of trouble keeping her feet aligned and her heels underneath her. The hinges on those heels are not the best, and they don't lock in place, so it's a little bit hard sometimes to keep them underneath her. And because of the wings, she is rather back heavy, meaning I really would have preferred some kind of proper heel spur to, high heels, which we've covered on past toys, does not often work. For extra little touches, you can see some metallic blue, just detailing her collar as well as her wrists. Her Autobot symbol is molded into her chest, which is a very tiny Autobot symbol, but it is there, fully detailed and everything. Overall, I really like the look. She matches this very good warrior aesthetic. I like the shoulder guards. I like the overall look of armor and all the sharp points that she has. She definitely looks very fierce, very cool character design. Very cool. I think they did the fans good creating something extremely unique in Transformers for them. For articulation, we do have a rotation at the neck as well as an up and down hinge, so you get a good range of motion there. Shoulders are ball jointed, as we found out, and the shoulder guards really don't get in the way because they're hinged to the forearm, so they have all this free rotation to go. Bicep rotation, as well as a pretty good 90-degree elbow, as well as a wrist articulation, which is a little tight on mine, but it's there. The waist also has rotation, as well as ball joints, work all the way out to the side, as well as the front. The molding on her thigh, this straight up, does hinder some directions, but it's not terrible. And you do have a thigh swivel right underneath, so you can adjust it if you want and get a little bit more range out of it. The knee bends to the 90 degree. In fact, the only basic level of articulation we're missing is some kind of ankle tilt, which, due to her transformation, I can see why it was not there. So, she does miss out on that, and the high heels do prevent you from getting her balanced correctly in certain poses. But for the most part, she is a highly articulate, highly effective action figure. A little bit thin in the proportions, so she does feel there's a little bit of hesitation to play with her a little too roughly, to get the poses a little bit too fast, but for the most part, she feels okay, so I'm not terribly concerned about it here. For a little bit of added effect, we also have this, of course, that big piece that was stuck to her actual vehicle mode was a sheath, which she can hold in her hand and thus draw her sword, and the articulation is nice enough to be able to do that and have poses where she is drawing her sword, which is extremely cool. Or you can also have it, unpeg. Now, whenever they do kind of mushroom pegs or ball joints, there's always this groove molded in. That's to give it a little bit of airway space so it doesn't create a vacuum or any kind of bubble that makes it harder to push in that risks breaking the plastic during assembly. It's just a little bit of space for the plastic to give. Well, they took advantage of it here to create a slot where the sheath can tab in at a more traditional spot and give you a little bit more of a sword wielder's profile. Very cool, and you can get some good poses out of this with her hand resting on the handle, ready to slice into just about anybody, most likely Starscream if you're reading the current comic book. Now, if I can get her to stand up, which you kind of have to, bend her knees a little bit like that, just to get her heels farther behind her and take up that extra weight on her back. Get a good look at the sword itself, which again, unique design. Not only do you have this interesting shape to the blade, you can see it is two-toned, purple going to clear at the top, creating a very nice energy look to it. The entire thing, the black, is painted black, and everything else is clear on it, including that central fan. I like this because it implies that this is somehow spinning wind in order to generate the energon blade. It's very thematic and very suited to the toy. This is what I mean about really working with the design elements that the fans picked in order to create something really cool and unique. So Windblade gets a very literal wind blade, and they worked a theme around that to make sense of a sword-wielding female transformer, which is where we get the Japanese aesthetic, I guess. Looking extremely cool. I'm such a fan of this character and the look that they created for the robot mode. So that, in a nutshell, my friends, is Windblade, who is pretty much the same character she is and the same design in the RID line, so maybe this counts for both, I don't know. In either way, she is an excellent toy. Yeah, maybe the Takara one came out a little bit better as far as locking together in the vehicle mode, but she's, the vehicle mode's transformation isn't too complex. The robot mode looks exceptionally good and unique, and it has been... I think it is extremely worthy as the first fan-selected Transformer, and I really hope they do more down the line, because, personally, I voted for, like, an avian Autobot, not a jet, because it's been so long since we had, like, a flying animal Transformer. And maybe I wanted Air Razor back, but beyond that, I'm really happy with the result.